Alright, what's up everyone? Beastiklees is back talking more Dungeons and Dragons. And today, I think I finally rambled on long enough about um, introducing, the game and, encouraging people to play. Of course, in each, video, I will continue to stress the fact that I do, encourage people to want to play the game, and hopefully, you're coming to my video, and if you stuck with me long enough to get to this point, then hopefully you do have that much of an interest to want to play. But as far as talking about wanting to play, let's finally get into how to play. Today's video is actually going to be a very basic, as basic can get, description of how the game works and how you play the game. Okay? Um, so, what is it? Again, it is a role playing game, tabletop role playing game. So, once again, you fill out a character sheet and you basically become that character. That character is you, you are that character. And you put yourself into a world, and once again, being this character, putting yourself into this world, it all involves imagination. All right, and uh, the way that you interact with that world is dice, dice, lots of dice, all the dice. Okay, get yourself some dice. All right. Dice is the core of Dungeons and Dragons gameplay. Okay, if you don't have any dice, I don't know what you're doing and how you're able to play the game, unless you've really broken it in some way. Okay, so let's go ahead and familiarize ourselves with the dice a little bit. Okay, this will just be a brief, quick, showing you what each individual dice is. All right, first one right here. This is your D20 is what it's going to be called. It's a 20-sided dice. This one will basically be your main lifeline into playing the game of Dungeons and Dragons. This will be all of your checks and balances, all of your combat, all of your, making sure that anything is successful. The dungeon master will have you roll one of these to check to see if what you want to do while you're interacting with the world has succeeded or has failed. All right, next. All right, next up is one of these guys. Hopefully you can see the numbers on it. This is a 10-sided dice, a D10, but you'll notice that, hopefully it's actually getting it, that these sides have 2 digits on them. The reason for that is because it's also referred to as a D100, or it's referred to as a percentile dice. You actually have two when you buy a set of these dice of 10-sided dice, and you're supposed to actually roll them together, and that will get you, from a number of 0 to 100. So if you roll them together, you take whatever number comes up on the dice with the 2 digits, and then your second digit will be recorded in this. Okay, so say I rolled this and I get this 20 right here, and then I come and I roll this one and I get a 7, that equals a 27. So, there's an example of how those dice work. Sometimes you may have to do some type of random encounter. The DM may have to roll it, or he may make you roll those two dice, and that will determine some crazy random encounter. So there's your 10-sided dice. Oh, real quick, back to the 10-sided die. The normal 10-sided die is also something that will be useful when you're in combat. Depending on the type of weapon that you have, it may require this as far as how much damage it does. There's about 5 different dies that your weapon can inhabit that type of damage. So basically, when you swing with a specific type of weapon, it will do that much damage at least every single time. So let's go ahead and look at those dice. So this one right here is a 12-sided dice. Once again, if you have a weapon that involves, up to 12-sided or D12 of damage, that's the one that you would want to use. Back to our friend the D10 right there. I have a weapon that does D10. This guy right here is a D8, diamond shaped right there. A lot of weapons in Dungeons and Dragons will be a D8. As far as the player's handbook goes, there are quite a number of weapons that do a D8 worth of damage. You got this guy. This is your D6, 6-sided die, normal cube. Everyone's seen one of these guys. Weapons may involve a D6. And finally, you've got your 4-sided dice. This goes from 1 to 4 when you roll it. Weapon damages as well as sometimes spells casting will involve rolling one of those dice or even multiples of those dice depending on the type of weapon or the type of spell, whatever it is that you're trying to do. You may have to roll one of those. Those I like to basically refer to as, the damage dice. Because those are most of the time when you'll actually be using those. Dice is when you're dealing damage, or perhaps if your character is on that level or if you're interacting that way, you would roll one of those dice to heal yourself or to heal someone else. Depending on if it's a healing spell or a healing potion that you take or something of that nature, those are the dice that you would roll. There are a couple of other random encounters that may require you to roll, one of those other dice for whatever reason that the DM has chosen. But for the most part, when you're interacting with the world, this will be your D20, which will give a majority of all of your interactions, and all of the other dice will mostly be used in damaging, healing, or if the DM so chooses, they may want you to use one of the other dice to come up with some other outcome. Okay, so we got all that boring crap out of the way with, exactly what you do to interact with the world. Now, how do you interact with the world? Once again, I'm going to stress this point. It is a role-playing game. The game involves playing a role. So you fill out a character sheet and you are that character. Cool? Cool. I like that. You are the character and you use your imagination to put yourself into this world that the Dungeon Master or the DM has created, be it based off of a pre-built campaign, or perhaps they've built the campaign themselves, from ground up, and you are, putting yourselves into their world that they've created. Imagine yourself like an actor in front of a green screen. The people, in Lord of the Rings or the people in Harry Potter, there was oftentimes that they were on a set and everything around them was just these green walls and floors and ceilings, and they had to interact with an empty space as if something was there to interact with. That's basically Dungeons and Dragons. You're pretending that what the DM is describing is in front of you actually is there in your mind, at least. You're pretending that it's there so that you can interact with it. What are the different types of interactions? Well, you can have a conversation with someone. You can get into combat. You can puzzle solve. Perhaps you go into a room and you find that there is a door that has no handle on it. Well, how do you open the door? You need to investigate the room and see if there's some type of button or pressure pad, or perhaps it's closed magically, so you have to find some type of magical device that triggers that door to open. So, there's some puzzle solving involved. Conversations, you go into a tavern, you speak with the innkeep and try and get some information. Perhaps you're looking for someone, or perhaps you're just looking to see if there's work that needs to be done. Is there a group of bandits that need to be cleared out? Do you need some help around town? Perhaps are you just are there troubles that have befallen the town or village or city that you could use a group of traveling heroes to clear it out or something? Perhaps you're in a conversation with someone and you need to lie to them. You need to deceive them in some way to get them on your side. Perhaps you are up against an enemy, character, and you want them to believe that you're on their side so that you can avoid having to fight them if you can. So, you try to lie to them, and the dungeon master will make you roll the trusty d20, and depending on what comes out, that's what will show if you're successful in making the person believe that you're on their side, or you may fail and they want to fight you because of that. Okay. In combat, you want to hit someone with your weapon, roll your d20. And have I made it clear that you need dice, by the way? Dice is important with Dungeons and Dragons. So in combat, you want to hit someone, roll the d20 to figure out if that hit is successful. While Dungeons and Dragons is very imagination driven, you can basically do whatever the hell you want to in this game. But I think with that concept of doing whatever you want comes with the concept of do whatever you want within reason. You can't just simply, I say, therefore it is, kind of mentality. I know it, some people will go into it and, especially if you truly do not understand, you go in there and with the mentality of, oh, I can do whatever I want to with Dungeons and Dragons, but, let me just go ahead and flex those muscles of I can do whatever I want to. You can't do whatever you want to. You have to, I wouldn't say you go in there with the confidence of I'm going to do this. It's more, especially if you're a new player and you're in a group of people, at least I hope that you have a dungeon master who, knows the game. Then when you want to do something, it's better to ask the dungeon master, hey, can I do this? I want to do this. Is that possible to do? The dungeon master may just flat out tell you, no, that's not something you can do. Or they may just say, well, go ahead and roll your trusty d20 and see if you can, So, yeah, be creative. Think about things that you want to do to interact with the world. Do whatever you want to within reason. There are still rules that exist with Dungeons and Dragons. There are still certain laws of physics, I guess you could say, even though it's a fantasy world. There are certain things that, as far as common sense goes, you just can't do. So, keep that in mind. So, I think that's all I can think to cover in today's video. We went over, just basically, what is the game? It's role-playing. You create a character, you put it into a world, and, you imagine that you are actually interacting with this world. And how do you interact with it? Dice! Get yourself some dice. And it's not even enough to get one set of dice. If you notice, once again, I had multiple sets of dice. Multiple sets of dice is going to be very useful because it's not just going to be dependent on one dice roll. Sometimes you have to roll multiple of the same dice. So it's always good to get multiple sets of dice. And honestly, a lot of these sets here, you can get multiple sets, in a single bundle for a pretty reasonable price. You can even get like a giant bag of just, multiple, sided dice and, multiple sets in that. So, that's part of, the investment in it. is instead of just getting the books, instead of, you know, getting all of the materials that goes with it, like the figures and the miniatures and perhaps maps for campaigns, dice is the most important investment. That is definitely something that you need to spend your money on, is dice. So let's go ahead and recap. Dice is important. Create your character, put it into the world, imagine that it's there, be creative, and have fun. It's Dungeons and Dragons. You know, the limit to your fun is it rests on your shoulders. Basically, it's you choose how much fun you want to have based on how you interact with the world or how you choose to interact with the world. So, you know, hope that was you know, clear enough and as basic gets as far as, you know, how the game works. And later, you know, in the following videos, I will go further into what all I just talked about really means, and it will probably paint a much clearer picture in later videos. But I want to just go ahead and start off with this. So, till next time, everyone. See ya.